welcome into the Peachtree Pod. I'm Jack Grossman. He's Phil Baker. Georgia Tech, massive win over North Carolina. That's what we're talking about today, right?
Yeah, you were in attendance, right?
I
You were given
was. Yeah, no, yeah.
you were given the updates of it was cheaper to go to see LeBron get blown out in Atlanta versus going to UNC and Mighty Mouse, I should say. Damon Stoudemire just doing work down in Georgia
Yeah, they
Tech.
are doing work. They beat North Carolina and Duke. So we're in the same season at home in year one, which I guess is technically year zero based off of what we've seen from year one head coaches in massive rebuilds. But yeah, in reality, obviously, this is Floyd Street's finest. He's Phil Baker. I'm Jack Grossman from ESPN Louisville. Mark Lieberman is traveling this week at busy schedule. I have my weird-ass work schedule. Weren't able to get anything to work out, but super, super, super happy to have my guy, Phil Baker, on. Phil, welcome to the pod, my man. ESPN Louisville Plus, Sunday Morning Hangover. Does
everything else,
everything
fill in host whatever needed.
Louisville.
I think I got the bat signal from Nikki V last night. We're playing V show later today, so no, I appreciate you having me. I know you've been busting your butt on this, and it's nice to be a part of the Rolodex. I feel like Charlie Strong and the seventh choice, being asked to coach at Texas, but I will gladly take it. You will not get a cowboy hat from me, but nonetheless, I'm happy to be here with my guy, the Minch of the Midwest, Jack Grossman.
Does that name still work now that I'm down?
I guess you're kind of in the Southeast. Doesn't have the same jingle to it, does it?
Yeah, no, I like mention the Midwest better. That sounds better. But anyways, Phil, very, very good to have you on. We'll get into, obviously, we're not going to talk Georgia Tech for 45 minutes, even though that would probably be more entertaining on some levels. That was a really fun game to cap off a really, really wild night of college basketball on Tuesday night, where you see, again, Georgia Tech beat North Carolina, South Carolina, Lamont Paris' squad backing up their blowout win over Kentucky with a win in Tennessee. Marquette Villanova was wild. I mean, Indiana, Iowa, it was cursed. I mean, I know that I'm the only one that cares about that game, but that's we don't need to go there. But Louisville falls to Clemson for a trend that's really picked up the last month or so, and that's they fall behind big early, they come back, make it competitive late, but in the end, it's not enough to actually win the game. So, Phil, I have a thought on this.
Okay.
Because I'm kind of seeing this every game now. It's, they fall behind, whether it's by 18 to Duke, I think 18 to Carolina in the first half, 12-0 to NC State, 41-13, obviously, Virginia. And last night, Tuesday night, down 25 or 24 rather, 55-31 against Clemson. And then they kind of almost flip a switch, I guess, is what people are saying they do. They battle back, they get within 5-6 points, and then they end up, not being able to win the game. So here's my thought. I'm starting to, and last time on the pod, Coach Lieberman kind of alluded to this, where I was trying to give Louisville some credit after they were able to battle back some against North Carolina. And he kind of pointed out, like, is it so much so Louisville battling back, or is it the other team taking their pedal off the gas? And for me, the more I watch it, the more I'm less inclined to just give Louisville all this credit for not quitting. Yes, is it good that they didn't quit and lose by 35 like they did against Wake Forest? Sure. But when you keep doing the same thing of falling behind really, really big and being down 18, 20, 22 points early in games, I mean, I was, to be completely honest, I was stuck in traffic in a parking garage listening to the end of the first half last night after the Carolina-Georgia Tech game. And Paul Rogers, I'm not going to say it's a direct quote because I'm paraphrasing here, but when Clemson went on that run late in the first half, he said something along the lines of, and again, this Paul Rogers, one of the most,
respected,
respected, trustworthy, honest people. He goes something along the lines of, at least Louisville waited until the end of the first half to collapse this time. It was something along those lines. It was, and I'm going out of my way to say that's not a direct quote because I don't have the direct quote, but it was something along the lines of, at least they waited until the end of the first half to collapse this time. And for me, yes, you can give them credit for not quitting. Yes, you can give them credit for battling back. But the narrative of, this shows how much talent they have. And I'm not doing, and please do not construe this as I'm trying to do this as a way to back Kenny Payne. But if they have all this talent and they have this ability, then have some damn pride and play that hard from the get-go. Because if you're going to just try to make it look better when you're down 25, I don't really care about that at this point. You're not doing enough to win the game. And Phil, I'm sorry that I'm monologuing here.
No, go. You're good, man. Keep going,
but
man.
For me, when you play a team, and I think the differences between playing North Carolina and Duke and doing it again in games against Clemson, NC State, kind of Virginia, because they were down 41-13. They lost by 17. How much of a moral victory that it's not, but especially NC State, Clemson, and even Miami. When those teams, which Miami I didn't think cared at all about that game at any point in time, but when teams like NC State and Clemson get out to those big leads, it's different from when you battle back from Carolina and Duke, because those two teams, especially Carolina's a legit top 3, top 5 team, even after losing to Georgia Tech. Duke's in the top 10 right now. When those two teams take the foot off the gas, start coasting, and kind of let you back into it, they're good enough to where they can step on your throat again, flip that switch back on, and be able to stretch that back out to 15, 16, 18 points. NC State and Clemson, they're mid. They're fine. They're whatever. BJ Hall's a really good player, but like both those teams are just kind of whatever. Those two teams don't have that same luxury that a Carolina or a Duke have, to where they start coasting after getting a big lead. They can't flip that switch back on. So to me, that's why, Louisville makes those runs and they end up still losing by like 20 to Carolina and Duke, but it's more competitive against NC State and Clemson. And to me, I look at it, and I'll get your thoughts on this, Phil. You just got to be able to sustain that for 40 minutes at some point. And Louisville doing it in the second half when they're already down big, I'm just over that conversation of they're showing fight, good for them, and let's have a moral victory for them being down 25 and losing by 8.
No, I appreciate the opening monologue, and it's interesting because take you and I out of it. Peyton Siva is saying this on Twitter as well. What you just said.
And I love Peyton Siva. He's one of my favorite Louisville players of all time. And he knows ball. He knows way more ball than I ever will.
But to your point, it's like, okay, we last year was the black cloud. Last year, it was kind of put on some of the players weren't into this necessarily buying into what Kenny Payne to get his guys in. Okay. At what point can you turn the page in it? And I think they're getting there. They got a talented recruiting class, and we're in agreement with that. But at what point can it turn the page to, okay, now we got to put together a complete game? And that's the interesting conversation that I think kind of flies under the radar, because I always say we open our show on Sundays when we fill in, or I'm helping out with Strebel or Ennis. It's like there's 4 different silos that you can break down, or buckets, if you will, that you can break down the Louisville basketball program. There's the game itself that really people don't want to dive into. Like that's why I appreciate you, because it's like you want to react to it. Guys like Maben and Rummage try to do their best, but then it comes to zero to coaching search, which I know it gets tiresome, because you and I love this sport oh so much, and it just breaks our heart that you're just doing that with about over a month left in the season to go. And then 2, it goes to the press conference as a whole and reacting to what Kenny Payne is going to say or not say. And people get mad, and just kind of 1A to 1B to that, the off the court stuff with Karan Davis still showing up to games. I heard you and Strebel talking about that. And then it just goes to, the next person that's going to be up, which I guess follows up with the coaching search. But I think something that flies under the radar, and I'm curious because I'm seeing it a little bit, and I'm not saying that it's right, but it is not an excuse, but something that's flying under the radar. The injuries. And I'm not putting a ton of stock into it, but I know the island is dwindling of what people are supporting Kenny Payne, but I am curious how it's viewed from those that still support the administration, the athletic department. Josh Hurd, I know he said he's not into moral victories, but I'm curious of fighting back in the second half. You and I fundamentally disagree on it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what the administration and the athletic department think. If that's going to lead to any sort of momentum for a I can't even fathom it, but an extra year. I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't think those are valid concerns. But it's something that I think the contingency, and Kenny Payne may have a point about that, but there were things that were transpiring before the season. I'm sorry, earlier in the season, I should say, that led you to believe that this wasn't getting better. But just something that's kind of flying under the radar that I don't think a lot of people are really talking about, just with the overall viewpoint of the basketball season thus far.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? There's part of me that wants to say that's a fair point because, Louisville literally played that game Tuesday night without a point guard. Even before Sky Clark got hurt, Sky Clark's more of a two guard instead of a point. And you can look at that and say they didn't have an assist until the 12-minute mark of the second half, which I don't care who the hell your roster is. That's unacceptable. But if you look at that just in a vacuum of that game, you can make that argument. The problem is this has been a thing for 2 years for Louisville, where they don't move the ball, they don't pass the ball, they don't set other guys up. They had that 5-game stretch where they were shooting over 45% from the field every game. First time in 5 years they've done that. And then what do they do against Virginia and Clemson? They go back to one pass, no passes, just try to straight line drive to the hole with no ball movement, no player movement, no nothing. You just completely reverted back to what you were doing when you were struggling on the offensive end. And to me, there's such a bigger picture side of it to where, yes, the injuries are unfortunate and they're clearly not playing with a full deck of cards, both in the front court the last, 6 weeks or so, and then now in the back court as well. But when you have so many other things that have gone wrong both on and off the court for 2 years now, it's hard for me to give you that excuse. Like for example, Indiana last night. I know people probably get annoyed when I bring in Indiana. I'm an Indiana grad. It happens. Indiana on Tuesday night, they're playing Malik Renew, who's been Indiana's best player by far this year, not even close. Sprained his ankle 3 minutes in the game, out the rest of the game. Khalil Ware is playing through 2 ankle injuries at this point. He's wincing after dunks. That's probably their second best player. Xavier Johnson, who's been in and out of the lineup all year, it looks like he broke his wrist, separated his shoulder, did something on a dunk late in the first half. They're playing 3 starters down. And if they go on the rest of the year, don't make the NCAA tournament, and those dudes are in and out of the lineup the rest of the year, people aren't going to blame the injuries and give that as an excuse for why Mike Woodson and year 3 were a failure. And by the way, they were able to beat a middling Iowa team even with all those injury issues last night. But I don't think that's sustainable for them long term, if especially Renew's going to be out long term. But you don't.
It's just something that I've been hearing from Danny Manning's press conference and Kenny Payne. Like Kenny Payne, and I don't know how often now that you're in Atlanta, listen to some of his press conferences like throughout the week.
I get the highlights. But
Ken Spencer, I want to say, asked him a question about what JJ and it wasn't a Patinoism or a prickly Mac kind of clapback, but it was almost like, he's like, no, he kind of chuckled. Kenny Payne is like, well, no one's asked me about JJ and what he means to this team. So I'm beginning to see some of these seeds planted as a narrative, right or wrong, but it's beginning. Danny Manning said it when he filled in for him the press conference. So I'm just curious what that conversation is like as we inch closer to the end of the season, what looks like there is going to be a change.
And I think the Indiana comparison is not so I can shoehorn Indiana into this. It's just saying, yes, there's injuries. Yes, JJ Traynor played an important role for this team. Yes, Ty-Laur Johnson's been kind of the guy that's stirred the drink for you offensively. Yes, Sky Clark is your leading scorer. But at the same time, you don't get that benefit of doubt when things were so bad. I mean, you had all those guys. You guys plus Dennis Evans when you lost to Arkansas State.
Agreed.
And got blown out. You had all those guys when you lost to no, they did not have JJ Traynor when they lost to DePaul. I will point that out. But they had all those guys when they lost to who was it even earlier in the year after they Chattanooga when they lost to Chattanooga,
Kentucky Wesleyan in an exhibition game. So no, I think ultimately and we talked about this on the ESPN Louisville Plus sidecast, shameless plug, our buddy Jeff Lacey, you can listen to him on 93.9 Saturday mornings. Justin Sofro, Bosch, and Nikki V were all on there. But I hate it because it just goes zero to who's up next. And I think the more interesting conversation, because there's still meat on the bone of just the season as a whole, of a complicated situation of now you have donors that are tweeting about the after the year one comments. I don't know how much you and Leibs talked about that last go around, but that's something where, Aaron Flaker, who's a part of a name all over the U of L baseball stuff. You've had Rick Hebert, who not as direct as Aaron Flaker, but names on the practice facility and is sharing Rick Pitino clips from St. John's talking about how he hates losing and everything like that. And it just feels
gives him
like
frostbite.
Right. And it may not be it may not be directed at KP, because obviously there's history with Rick Pitino here, but it sure comes across that way. And that's where Twitter takes it and runs with it. So I think ultimately that's what's going to be the driving force for Josh Hurd to make a decision, especially with more and more donors becoming vocal after the year zeros, year one comment and whatnot, depending what year you're in. But that's what's been fascinating to me. And then, as you've pointed out multiple times, the stuff off the court is just head scratching and just, you get Davis on the Jumbotron.
They put Karan Davis on the Jumbotron, man.
Telling you, man, this is our game. So, actually, guys, we could have helped them. We could have helped. It's like, hey, I think that's Karan Davis there. Maybe stay away from putting ball there.
I know it's not a big crowd right now, but you don't need to put that guy on when you're down 56-28 to Virginia in the second half. That's just it's no one's fault on that front, but it's just, of course, of course with Louisville basketball at this point that's a bad luck into that, but that's still, it's just an unfortunate thing. But to kind of tie things all together here, Phil, you want some X's and O's? I'll give you some X's and O's.
Yes, please.
So Louisville did have a chance to win that game against Clemson, despite everything on Tuesday night after, being outscored 29-9, falling behind 24, not having an assist until the 12-minute mark. Louisville fights their way back, whatever you want to call it. Clemson, I would give it, more. Clemson caught the 10:45 flight down to Cancun, joined up with, the Dodgers there getting ready for spring training. But they cut the lead to 6 with 3:35 left. You have a real chance to win this game at that point. Down 62-56, 3:35 left. If you're going to, fight this narrative that I've been building out for you here at the start of this podcast, you go win this game.
Yeah.
Instead, here's the next 3 possessions in this game. Clemson is able to run a set piece, to use a soccer term there, but they run a play to where they get the ball in the high post, have a high-low action look, very, very easy feed to PJ Hall for a drop step layup. Louisville didn't pressure the ball. They didn't prevent the Clemson guys from getting to the spot to where they wanted to. They were able to get that high post feed easy. Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, who PJ Hall absolutely dominated in this game, despite Hall having a bad shooting night from the outside on both ends of the floor. Huntley-Hatfield had his worst game in probably 2 months. I'm not going to rail on him too much, as he's been really consistently good for Louisville.
Been a bright spot, yeah.
Yes, but PJ Hall had his number on Tuesday night. It happens sometimes, but Huntley-Hatfield does not fight for post positioning to where Hall catches it. Easy drop step layup. Now you're down 8. Next possession down, Jovanovic misses a layup and then fouls Hall on a rebound to put them in a 1-on-1. Then Hall misses the free throw, but you give up an offensive rebound off of the missed free throw. One of the Cardinals' sins of coaching. And then they end up working the ball around, second chance on the possession. They get the ball back to Hall. Huntley-Hatfield does better initial work of pushing Hall back outside of the paint a little bit when he catches the ball. But then they let him just kind of sit there and evaluate his options, don't pressure him at all. And Huntley-Hatfield backs off of him a little bit to where now Hall's comfortable. He's in his spot. He knows what he wants to do. Curtis Williams tries a weak dig on him when he tries to cut to the basket off of a post move, but it's not a good dig. It doesn't affect what he's doing at all. Easy post move, baby hook. Now you're down 10. And at that point, Clemson kind of did all they could to try to help you back in it again after that, missing free throws, turning the ball over, doing all that stuff. But it didn't matter. Louisville had their chance to go out and win that game, and they had 2 atrocious defensive possessions followed by with a missed layup and a foul 94 feet from the basket in between. You want me to give you the injury excuse? You want me to give you anything else? You had your chance. in that game to go win that game, and you peed down your leg for 3 possessions.
And at some point, it has to correlate the wins. I mean, that's the
Yes.
elephant in the room that I know everyone keeps talking about. But I'm 100% with you. It's just I know D'Lo had a foul after a missed layup at the end of the game that kind of people were scratching their heads, and it just seems to be one thing after another. And what was conveyed to me, because it was an interesting conversation that we had last night on the ESPN Louisville Plus sidecast. We were trying to discuss, it's like, what do you think of this coaching staff? Like, what do you think ultimately of how it's perceived? Like, if they do in fact move on, which it looks like it's trending that direction, like, where do these guys end up after that? And I'm curious because I think they're all, for the most part, pretty respected. Like, I mean, I know there's been some stuff here locally that maybe has you scratching your head, but I think from the optics standpoint, like, Nolan Smith was a top 40, under 40 caliber assistant coach on the rise from all those metrics that were out there. Danny Manning, by all accounts, seems to be pretty respected. Kenny Payne, you know how everyone loses their mind when he smiles after a post game. So he seems to be a likable guy. For that, not real sure what Josh Jameson does, but that's a discussion for another day. But I think when you just kind of break down just this, and what people say, Joe Lunardi had only 3 teams in bracketology from the ACC. What's projected as a bad ACC.
Which
you gotta get.
I would put Wake Forest in. Just I
think it's since up that I agree with you on that. I know Steve Forbes was kind of the hipster pick last go around. That it was kind of off the radar when we were talking coach, but yeah, he's building something special down there too. So when you put all this into the crock pot and stew it up, it seems, and Damon Stoudemire and Shrewsbury at Notre Dame with what they're doing at year one, I get it. Like, I understand you can use the cloud and everything that's transpired, but at what point can you turn the page? That's always been my go back to, if you are the biggest KP supporter, at what point does the page turn? And because obviously you were able to do decent in the recruiting and the transfer portal and the recruiting, like you had a top 6, top 7 class. And we had somebody on the text line, and I don't mean to just like pinpoint on this guy, but he was battling Nick and I on Sunday last week. He was like, your eye test can tell you that this team doesn't have talent. I was like, I can't have that conversation. So you mean to tell me out of the top 10 teams from 247 that has Kentucky, Duke, I think they were ranked ahead of Indiana and Baylor and Kansas, are right around the same thing, are the defending national champs, Connecticut. They all got it right in terms of evaluating talent, but they didn't. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's the measuring stick all the time, but it's got to count for something. So if you can't rely on that, and you constantly keep going back to the well of, okay, they're almost there, there's fight. Well, at what point does that fight correlate to wins? And I know he's saying they're young. I know they're saying there's injuries, but ultimately that's what's going to be the nail in the coffin, dare I say, I think, for this coaching staff is just, there's just not enough wins. And it's a favorable schedule, although some of the teams that they have coming up on their schedule at the tail end of this, I'm curious what the conversation, if they do start peeling off some wins.
Yeah,
that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, and kind of the conversation that I remember having on the pod a couple weeks ago, I believe it was when I was with Mark Ennis on the pod, was that, they had this stretch coming up to where the ACC is not a good league. I still think it's better this year than it's been the last couple of years, but that's not saying much because it's been really bad the last few years. But they had this stretch that they just completed where they played, NC State, North Carolina, Wake Forest, Duke, Virginia, Clemson. That's the top of the league right there. And they lost all those games, obviously, but the question would those games break their spirit in terms of what comes up after that, to where, Florida State, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Boston College, Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, then Duke, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Boston College, and the season. Those are all pretty bad teams. They are. I mean, they're not great, other than obviously Duke. I mean, Syracuse is technically on the bubble, but they lost to Boston College on Tuesday night.
So the conversation becomes, and again, they have one win in conference play, so I'm not projecting any wins on there, but you could make the argument that there could be some wins along the way. Does it matter?
No, because now
that's where I'm at too. I just want to make sure we're on the same page with that, because collectively, I don't know, sometimes if I'm working at the station in the fishbowl that is there, and I hear the same things over and over again in absolutes.
I'll give you a good comparison for this.
Okay.
So Saturday, I'm at work during the Virginia game, and I have it on my laptop. I have the sound on, just just because I'm working, but like I'm trying to watch also, and just kind of paying attention. I'm watching
You're
one of my
basketball
friends.
Benny on
Yeah,
the clock. Yeah, that's what you
exactly.
do.
What one of my friends is working at the desk next to me, and I've been the guy that all my friends down here in Atlanta who don't give a crap about college basketball or obviously Louisville basketball. That I've been the dude that just is the annoying guy that just keeps bringing it up. And I've been just kind of showing them all the ridiculousness that's gone on with Louisville basketball. And this is one of my better friends that I'm sitting next to. And we're watching the first half while we're working. And we're looking at it. Okay, they're 3 for 21 from the field. They have 9 points with 3 minutes left in the first half. They're now 41-13 at halftime. And not gonna lie, if you don't laugh, you get angry. And I would rather, just kind of not that it's sad is what it is, but it's just like unbelievable. It's like an unbelievable funny how bad it was. 41-13 for this guy that has never seen any of it like this. He's
Right.
sitting there, he's just kind of laughing at it. My friend is, and he turns to me at halftime and he goes, "I now understand why you're so obsessed with this." It's just, and he says, "I didn't realize how bad it actually was that you were that everything you kept saying with it." I'm like, yeah,
Welcome to the party, pal.
Welcome to the club, man. But I think that's the when you talk about like truly out of the circle, out of the fan base part of it. When someone gets exposed to it for the first time, just the shell shocked of it, like you can't describe how bad it is until you actually sit down and watch it. Well, and for me, you're sitting there at 10-38 to where, yeah, let's say they win a few games of, Ken Pom gives them a 45% chance to beat Georgia Tech at home, a 55% chance to beat Notre Dame at home. You win a couple of those games, maybe you pick off a Virginia Tech or a Boston College or a Syracuse, something like that. At the end, if you do that, you're at what? 9 wins, 10 wins.
It still doesn't matter. No, I'm
not
with you.
enough.
I'm just, no, trust me. And I'm with you. It's just, sometimes I feel like we're too close to it at the station because we hear it and it feels like a lot of things, not to like take a slide at anybody, from the callers, the hosts, a lot of the same things get regurgitated. And it was the same thing with the Kenny Payne when you were doing shows there. You and I had massive reservations about and concerns. Curran was like first time head coach, got crushed for it. And it's funny because now, the Calipari coaching tree and everything like that you see over and over again. But you could buy into some of the stocks, elite recruiter, and the connections at the Nike EYBL connection, like that matters. But for whatever reason, and I think that athletic piece, and that was probably the most eye-opening thing to me, just the deep dive on that from a random objective journalist who didn't have a dog in the fight, just how he perceived it. And that was, sometimes you got to get away from that too. I watch some of the Field of 68 stuff and I see, Goodman and Hummel have the discussion, and Hummel just perception. It's like, it's a mess there. And it's like, okay, like it is, but like that's behind it. Like, it's just, you can't keep using it as a crutch over and over again, because then it seeps down. The team believes it. The coach believes it. It's a victim mentality. Yeah. And you got at some point, like if you keep relying on that, like I inherited a mess. What do you think the players think when they hear that from the head coach?
Yeah, I mean that's why that's where I go to who the next guy is, no matter who they hire. That dude needs to come in, balls to the wall, and say, "Look, I don't care what's happened here. It's a new era." And he has to embrace the pressure that the fan base is going to put on him to win and win quickly, because it's not Kenny Payne's fault that Louisville was 13-19 and had the extortion scandal or the FBI stuff or the long history of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, Louisville, when they miss the NCAA tournament this year, is going to miss it. Yes, they would have made it, obviously, as like a 3 or 4 seed 2020, but that'd be 5 straight years without NCAA tournament, 4 straight NCAA tournaments missed that you could have played in. It's the first time Louisville would miss 4 straight NCAA tournaments they could have played in since 1958.
That's crazy. I mean, and I think,
and I get it. 2 of those were not Kenny Payne. He wasn't on the staff, but at some point, there's that sense of urgency from the fan base to where they want to win. They want to be competitive. And
it's a realistic expectation that as one of the top 6 or 7 programs historically, you can be one of the 68 teams to make the tournament. I understand people weren't expecting Kenny Payne to go to the Final Four national championship game in year 1, even the second weekend. It's expected to be, with the budget and the resources you have there, to be one of 68 teams. That's not an unreasonable request at all.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 each and every week of the college basketball season. We have a special offer that will be available starting on Tuesday, January 9th and running through Monday, February 12th, the morning after Super Bowl 58. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, in honor of the big game, you can use the bonus code FIELD158 and you'll get $158 in free bets on your first wager with BetMGM, regardless of whether or not you win that first bet. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD158. Deposit at least $5 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive $158 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your bet. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD158 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly, which happens quite a bit. When you cross state borders, you just log into your existing account and fire away. You don't have to create separate accounts in each state. It's easy, it's simple, it's clean. And most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the heart of the college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odd boosts, and my favorite, a nice juicy parlay boost. So download the BetMGM app and sign up today. Field 158.
I go back to, I don't know if you saw this last night, because I want to ask you about the Trilly Donovan tweets that were out there. Then Mick Cronin is apparently now off the board.
We were going to get there. Yep.
But did you see the Eric Crawford tweet last night? He said, somebody asked him, Robert Sherman asked him, so I'm stealing this content from him, who's our next coach, Eric? And I guess I didn't want to go down this route, but this is what I had my Twitter sphere opened up, or X. Says that Eric Crawford said, I don't have a good feel, so I'm not weighing in. I do think most of what's out there now is just chatter. I think there are legit candidates who have hardly been mentioned in a few. I want to get this right as I.
You are getting lots of talk that may not be among the finalists. I would imagine, and here's a big point I'm at. I imagine agents are pretty active getting names out, but the more serious you are, the less you want your name out there right now.
Precisely.
That's where I'm at. When I look at Louisville financially, and I know I've said this many times here, but I feel like it's worth saying again. The guys at State of Louisville did the open records request to where Louisville between 2018 and 2026 are paying $39.9 million in buyouts. Yeah, eventually Kenny Payne's $8 million on top of it. That's 47.9, basically $48 million in buyouts. Plus, you add in the additional layer of Louisville's not in the SEC or the Big Ten. They don't have, while the ACC makes good money off the TV deals, it's not nearly as much. That gap that everyone keeps talking about is a large gap that does matter and makes a difference in how much money you have to pay for it. That doesn't even get into all the other stuff of the donors and the jury stuff and all that stuff. I'm going to kind of stay away from that side of it. Just the hard facts of $48 million in buyout money, plus not having the open pocketbook that the SEC and Big Ten schools have. So I look at a dude like Eric Musselman, and if he takes the job, that would be spectacular for Louisville. I think he would do a great job, would be a great fit, and he's the type of guy that's proven that he could go somewhere and win immediately. He did that at Arkansas, he did that at Nevada, and he has a really good understanding of the transfer portal. And yes, I get it. He hasn't had the greatest year this year, but I'll take the dude that had 2 Elite Eights and a Sweet 16 the previous 3 years and trust him to figure it out personally. But to say that Arkansas, that Louisville can just money whip Arkansas because they're traditionally a better basketball program is foolish because Arkansas, 1, has the SEC money. 2, other than Kentucky, they might care about basketball more than any other school in the SEC. And yes, that's obviously a massive drop from UK, but but they have a really good atmosphere at Bud Walton Arena. I'd love to get there one day. It looks like a lot of fun for a big game. But 3, even they have the Walmart money, man. like people don't talk about that, but I think it was I was talking to Strebel. He said he had a guest on last week where UK played Arkansas. He asked him, said, yeah, no, they would open up the Walmart money for Eric Musselman. So for me, him getting his name out there, and again, I have nothing to back this up. This is just me speculating for just the pure idea of speculating. I could totally see Eric Musselman doing the same type of thing Bruce Pearl did, where his agent's just trying to get his name out there just so he can get another.
Oh, you're not happy with me right now? Just know others are still think I'm I'm a high tier coach. No, I completely agree. I think Rutherford put something out, and I know our buddy Ty Spalding shared something from his hit on LSL and said, "Watch out for this. Like this is going to be something that happens." And this is something Ennis, I could have kissed his beautiful bald head on the forehead and just, I was like, it's exactly how I felt in regards to, the prearranged marriage, it felt like with Chris Mack, which upset a lot of the former players, if you go back to that, and Vince Tyra, not by a lot of former players' optics, not doing a due diligence and at least talking to Kenny Payne. Then the next one, and it's funny. I heard you and Greer talking about a few earlier this year with you. We were talking about you brought up Greg Garr, and he's like, I said that. I was like,
he did say that.
I've been taking that and running with it on the B show when I fill in. So it's like, I hope you said it because I'm either slandering you or completely making that up. But anyways, it was conveyed that from I recall, and maybe it was just our discussions with you and I, it was Kenny Payne, mid-major coach, or somebody like Greg Garr, Matt McMahon. Were like the ones kind of in that scope of who Louisville could get. And people lost their mind over somebody like Greg Garr.
Yeah.
And Jack, you're a basketball Benny. Where is Wisconsin ranked right now?
In the top 10, and they play Purdue on Sunday. And if they win that game, they'll have a 2-game lead in the Big Ten.
Bingo. The reason I asked that, and I bring that up, if I don't want Josh Hurd to listen to sports talk radio. I know it's terrible unless he wants to have an AirPod in for ESPN Louisville, but not listen whenever this comes up. I don't want him to listen to you. I'm sorry, Jackie Gross. I don't want him to listen to former players. I don't want him to listen to donors. If he, in his heart of heart, because I think he'll probably hire another search firm, boy, we're in the wrong business, Jackie Grossman.
I know. We got to get it on that, man.
We got to get on that. Grossman and Baker. We need another name to sound like a legit Jewish entity on that. But if he has somebody who's off the radar, who is a non-sexy name, I'm okay with it. I'm going to sit back because it's his decision and nobody else's. And he will have to, because it's a career move for him too. Like he can't sit there and hide behind an interim this go around. Like this is something that is going to have to be a make or break type of hire for him. And, it's just fascinating to me because we go zero to big names and you have to have a big ego and you got to win the press conference. I'm open to anything, my man. Like that's kind of how I'm at right now. I've seen the Indiana State coach around. I've seen Iowa State. I'll listen to everything. I've seen Lamont Paris at South Carolina. But as Double D and Blank have said multiple times, you get to a couple wins in March, boy, your profile goes up a little bit and you show up on people's radars. There may be somebody, and that's why I thought Eric Crawford's tweet was so interesting. There may be some folks that are just putting their name out there to maybe get a little extra payday and get an extension. It's like, oh, I'm not having the best year right now. Well, others are highly, considering me in some regard. So, but I'm open to anyone in any discussion and an open dialogue about why it could work here, because there's not that sure thing out there right now. There's some that may be perceived better than others. But when you talk about, I want somebody that has Final Four experience. Do you know how difficult that is to get somebody like, if Scott Drew, he won a national championship at Baylor, he's been there 2 decades and has a brand new arena. Like just because he's from Indiana, like that's his own thing down there. Like I'm open for, look, I would love for it to happen. Somebody like Kelvin Sampson, who I think, not to be an ageist, Bob, sorry, but I think he would be a great fit here, but he's got a great thing going, a powerhouse going down there. So it may be a dose of reality of just kind of the pecking order. I think you can have those discussions, but man, I don't know if it's just going to be the prearranged marriage like with Chris Mack and just laser focused on KP. And then even going back to the Patino stuff, I mean, he had to be convinced because it was like Michigan was in the mix. I think this is going to be a fascinating just couple weeks or months after hopefully it's under a month, whoever that next coach is, if in fact Josh Hurd decides to go that route.
Yeah, and it's uncharted territory for Louisville because, you just said it. It's been since 1971 since Louisville's had an actual coaching search for basketball. Which and I'm sure there's historians that could go into more detail about how Denny Crum was hired. I don't really know. I don't really know if he was, kind of preordained as the dude, or if they did an actual search and delete to him. Obviously, whatever it was, it worked out. But it's been at least about 50 years since Louisville's had.
It's going to be a dose of reality, man.
Yeah, because even the big name guys. Musselman hasn't had the greatest year. Jerome Tang hadn't had the greatest year. Mick Cronin obviously has had a really, really rough year at UCLA. All these dudes that you've kind of considered as these are the frontline guys haven't had great seasons. Scott Drew's still in the top 15. He's really good, but I still think that's more of a pipe dream there, if anything else. That would obviously, I think he would be the absolute best dude you could get.
Agreed.
But that's like Kentucky fans and Billy Donovan type stuff there. It's kind of how I feel about that, to where I back in the day, to really go back in the time machine there. But I just on the agent stuff, because the names I've heard, I don't know a lot. I'm very much on the outside. The few things I have heard have come from people who have talked to sports agents, and that's kind of the names that I've gotten, to where I'm like, okay. That's you almost have to take it with that grain of salt. So, I had one person tell me Shaka Smart would be interested. That to me was like, why would Shaka Smart leave Marquette?
Yeah, he's
already taken the big swing with Texas, and it didn't go great. To where he took the money, he took the high profile job, and it really didn't work great. Now he's at Marquette, which is probably a top 20 job in the country, and has a really, their own good tradition, and have been to Final Fours, won a national championship with Al McGuire. And he has that thing rolling where they're in the top 10, top 15 year in, year out right now. They won the Big East last year. They were a 2 seed. They're probably going to be a 2 or 3, maybe a 4 seed this year. Why would he leave that at this point?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think it would be an experiment more maybe like the Tennessee coaching search with Josh Heupel, where it was a kind of a non, people were excited, but it wasn't, it's like, okay, show me, prove to me. And then a fun first year. And people were
that's
excited.
the thing. If you win games, it really doesn't matter. And that's where I go back to, obviously the Chris Beard discourse has been really heating up this past week. And here's I want to get your thoughts on him also, Phil. It's a tough conversation to have.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right answer is, but I'll say this. Taking my personal thoughts out of it, when you look at sports and the sports culture, you can be, he wasn't convicted. It was all alleged what he did, but you can have personal issues in sports, and some can call it a second chance. Some can call it just turning a blind eye to it, whichever way you want to phrase it. But you can do bad things and still be universally loved in sports and still be a winner and win games. Because at the end of the day, if you win games and you win championships, win titles, people look the other way on that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's just how it is. And it gets proven over and over again, no matter what sport you want to look at.
And again, I mean this in, yes, because it is a difficult discussion to talk about, but to your point, I heard Ennis and Biscuit, and I think Griever joined them to talk about it. Not all alleged, baggage things are the same thing or at the same level.
Will Wade baggage and Chris Beard baggage are two totally different things.
Precisely. But what I think it comes at, as you pointed out, alleged, and I understand the fatigue from the Louisville fans on that. I really do. Before you joined Strebel and Anna yesterday, they had a very impassioned discussion about it. And James, our buddy James Black on there too. And it was funny to me because my thing is, and this is, take Chris Beard out of it because I know you're talking about it, but just baggage, Kelvin Sampson, Will Wade, anybody with baggage. They were going back and forth, Anna and Strebel, Kentucky folks, that were essentially saying, aren't you tired and fatigued of being the laughing stock? And I was like, let me ask you this. Let's just play devil's advocate. and again, I want to reset over and over again. This is not just about Chris Beard. It's any coach that you deem that has baggage. You've tried the nice guy thing. You make fun of Scott Satterfield and the L's down and everything. He got everybody at the station. You didn't get a bottle, or I didn't get a bottle. A lot of people bourbon bottles at the station.
I would have liked
Tried
to
the nice guy
bottle. Yeah.
I would say there. Kenny Payne smiles after losing. How's that going for him? You know, you tried these right, with the altar boys and all these things, and it's not the diminished because all baggage is not equal to the same. I understand the fatigue of a lot of Louisville fans. I truly do. But do you, in my opinion, this is just me, I think the damage is already done. I know a lot of people have said over and over again, the athletic department's worked really hard to try and fix its perception. You have friends in Atlanta that you've met since your time down there. When they think of Louisville basketball, how do they think of it?
Strippers and hookers in the dorm.
And
it's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate.
To quote Pat, and yes, I did quote Pat 40 on that.
So I think it's just when you keep worrying about everything, and I understand within the fan base, like serious allegations with the Beard stuff, but you know, the Kelvin Sampson and Will Wade, not the same. I get it. I understand the fatigue. I truly do. But if you're trying to appease everybody in the athletic world, like, in my opinion, I think the damage is already done with that. In my opinion, do not think that Chris Beard is as realistic, because I think the conversations that have been out there, they kind of threw him a lifeline at Ole Miss. I know it looks like his buyout would be obtainable, but coaches are wired a little bit differently to where they think they can take on any and all challenges and make it work and kind of be the hero and rewrite their history. And it's funny because, you know, like, again, not trying to be the one up. What's the difference between a guinea pig and a rat? One has a good PR agent.
I'll say this. I mean, Chris Beard's also the same dude that took the UNLV job and then left for Texas Tech 2 weeks later.
Right.
So like that, I was just Googling to make sure that to confirm it was like 98% sure. It's like, so I do think that, you know, it would honestly help Louisville that Ole Miss was kind of the first school to take him. I would think, honestly, and I'll say this, like, and kind of the big point I was kind of getting at is it doesn't really matter what type of person you are. If you win games, people don't care,
right? And
I don't know if that's right or wrong. And that being said, there are a lot of different types of personalities that win. Like, I kind of disagree with the kind of the segment of Louisville fans that kind of make the point of you can only win with an asshole.
It was used against Bobby Petrino when he was here, of saying they didn't know where his office was. He's too mean to the kids. Satterfield's going to love him up. So to your point, it's the moving of the goalpost that to create your argument for what you ultimately want to have happen.
Right. And I think it goes back to the point of people usually want the opposite of what they had of what the fired coach was. But I think, you know, Jerome Tang, you know, had the long thing about loving up his players earlier this year, and he was in the Elite Eight last year. You know, Scott Drew's whole thing is like wholesomeness, friendship, family. He's a big religion guy, and he won a national championship and built a monster at Baylor. I think you can have a lot of different personalities that win. Just the question does it come down to, will you win games? And if you win games, whether you're a saint or an asshat, and I'm not just calling Beard an ass. I don't want
in general. It's a blanket statement on anybody. I mean, coaches, I've heard, you know, Musselman's prickly. It could go with him. Like, if he doesn't mesh well with the media, like he's a jerk after a couple of losses. And like these things and these narratives get created when things aren't going well, and how do they react to it?
That was always my thing with Chris Mack. People got mad at Chris Mack saying, you know, he didn't handle the media well. He didn't handle the Louisville job well. People weren't saying that the first 2 years when he took a team that was an NIT team under David Padgett, lost its four leading scorers and made the NCAA tournament, was ranked number 1 year 2, was going to be probably a 3 or 4 seed. People didn't care about that until he stopped winning games.
To take it a step further, I think his name's Mason Holden from WHS 11 asked Kenny Payne the question, what halftime adjustments did you make? Paul Rogers on 93.9 DeVille asked Kenny Payne, God bless Paul, you talked about him just being as professional as can be. It's like, is it fair to say the basketball IQ it isn't quite there? Paul Rogers asked Kenny Payne that. And it's just, so to your point with the media, all that stuff brushes over if you're winning. People don't care about what assistant coaches, maybe wearing Nikes, maybe that's a little bit other of a different discussion.
That's something only Louisville fans care about.
Precisely. Like no one spots it. I send it to my little group message. I send it to my little group message because I laugh about it, but it keeps piling on it's like 1,000 little paper cuts. And that's what I think ultimately is going to make the decision. But I know that we tried to avoid the coaching conversation, but it's inevitable. You're like Thanos, because I know you don't understand that reference because you watched nothing.
I actually have seen most of the Marvel movies now.
Wow, that is a shocker. That is a shocker from you. I did not have you as that. I just thought you were watching Sports Center for the 7th straight hour or something like that, or recaps the Baseball Tonight or something from back in 2018.
I'm watching 1998 Baseball Tonight to see all the Sammy Sosa.
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing. Well, that's basically I felt like we had to hit on the coaching search stuff today because it's just been such a big topic this week, and I'm happy we did. But Phil, really, really appreciate the time. I'll be back with Coach Lieberman. I think we're planning on Sunday or Monday, kind of getting back out there. But really, really appreciate the time again. We'll get you back on here as well, man.